Welcome to Y11 Audio. I'm Alex Alvarado. Thank you for listening. It's previews weeks. It's previews weeks. No, you didn't see this coming. No, I haven't announced it. This is the start of previews week. We have 1, 2, 3 weeks of previews to get through in the lead up to the start of the 2024 college football season. Obviously, we're going to be breaking down a lot of things for Eastern Michigan. We're going to start with talking about offense all this week, defense all next week, and then we're going to talk about the MAC as a whole, kind of just splitting things up by pods throughout the final week leading up to the season. So the way we're going to do it, with the offense first, we're just going to break it up positionally, just kind of go through the roster, read through everything, kind of remember some things that happened last year, maybe years before, expectations coming in, what do we remember, and of course, most importantly, which is going to dominate, obviously, the biggest percentage is what do we expect to see? Who do we expect to see out there? So today we're going to talk about the quarterbacks. Tomorrow we're going to talk about offensive line, then to the receivers, and then Thursday we're going to finish up the offensive positional previews with the running backs and tight ends together. Fridays we're going to have something else. You're just going to have to stick around and find out what that is, aren't you? Last year's EMU's quarterback situation was the story of the team. It seemed like, especially going back over the numbers, reading through the defense, that defense did its job, man. That defense was not given a lot, offensively to, complement itself. The offense didn't hold up its end of the bargain. It had a lot of skilled players, a lot of, enough returning pieces at, certain spots, especially at offensive line, running back, not many receivers, of course. But hey, it was time for Austin Smith to finally show what he had. He was a guy that was at least a state championship, I think he won a state championship when he was in high school down in Georgia as a junior, I believe, for Cedar Grove. Had played at a high level at his high school level, was thrown into, playing as early as 2022 after his first year as a redshirt, right? Who didn't play his first year there. Him and Taylor Powell just kind of trade off and on, with injuries coming out. Taylor Powell during that Arizona State game, Austin Smith had to come in. Then once Taylor Powell came back in, had to lose that Toledo game before Austin Smith finally, restarted that season. Then he had to exit with an injury. Taylor Powell, of course, finished things out, won the bowl game. All is well there. And so the excitement is super, super sky high, right? You're returning a lot of good pieces, especially on defense that we've already talked about. And the important one is Austin Smith, who, sure, he hasn't gotten the full reins yet. But now it's his turn. Now it's time for him to prove that he's the one. Prove that he got enough development time, and he's going to recover well from that injury that he suffered during the Akron game? Kent State game? I think it was Kent State, actually. Underneath Austin Smith on the depth chart going into last year, there wasn't much there either. There was some promise with Aiku Dengwu, who was a, super under the radar, JUCO guy, not even at Hutchinson Community College, East Mississippi, and no disrespect, but the name of the school is the most this is the most made up thing ever. Was it Mount San Antonio in California, something like that? Anyways, Aiku Dengwu came in, got a couple of starts, actually. You might not remember it, but he actually did have 2 starts. And there was also Cameron McCoy, who was also on the baseball team, is still being a dual threat athlete over at Jackson State. The depth wasn't super, super great. The QB1 option was hope it goes well because we have enough good pieces around you. If you get a good season, hey, maybe we're going to the MAC championship, right? Obviously, things did not go well offensively. Just no rhythm from the jump. And like when things went good, like didn't last very long, right? There wasn't a lot of, I don't know, it was just a disheartening season. Just wasn't the best that wasn't what you wanted to see out of him. And the whole offense just kind of took a step back. Fewer plays were ran, fewer big opportunities were to be had, and guess what? They made fewer opportunities because of it. Ended up going to a bowl game. He still finished out strong, even though he just did not have a season that he was very proud of, but still finished out pretty strong with that Buffalo win. Probably had like the most animated touchdown score when he rushed that one in the first half. And it was like the most, I don't know, outwardly expression that he showed like on the field. Not that like anybody really has to. I don't care if like, you're quieter than, a church mouse out there. I don't know. But it was just, it was the most character that we've seen out of him, just to say. So after the regular season, before the bowl game, he announces that he's out of town. He's at Austin P. Aiku Dengu's since transferred out after the spring. So did Cameron McCoy. Cole Snyder came in from Buffalo. Drew Viotto, he came in from Minnesota and originally committed to Eastern Michigan during the 2023 recruiting cycle. Went to Minnesota, flipped late in that cycle, but yeah, now he's back at Eastern. So that's great to see. Then Jeremiah Salem, a small school kid from Indiana. I'm sorry. I'm thinking of Jace Stuckey. I read Jeremiah Salem, but I'm thinking of Jace Stuckey. Let's get to Jeremiah Salem because he's been on the roster, when those guys left, Smith, Udengu, McCoy. Jeremiah Salem, former walk-on in 2022, ended up earning a scholarship this past spring. He's a coach's son. His dad, Brad, he was a long time for about 10 or so years at Michigan State. QB coach, offensive coordinator. Didn't stay on staff when Mel Tucker at the time took over. Now he's at Memphis. So that's why if you read the roster and you're like, hey, Jeremiah Salem, where's he from? Oh, Tennessee. He's a walk-on. That's weird. He actually grew up in Lansing. So, but yeah, Jeremiah Salem, he's a guy that Chris Creighton said that, hey, this team is rallying behind. This is a guy that's been showing up. He's obviously the most tenured guy on the roster at quarterback, and he knows, just by time spent, this EMU playbook more than anybody else. So it's good to see that his performances, seems like it's been going well and that the team's kind of behind him. So definitely adds to the depth piece if he hits, but more on that in a little bit. Jace Stuckey, the guy I was getting confused about earlier, sorry. Small school from Indiana who's done really well for himself there. Enrolled early. Actually, it was he's kind of like had like a historical presence because he was able to practice with the team at least once in the lead up to the bowl game in South Alabama. So that's pretty cool. But Jay Stuckey, Drew Viotto, the twoest newcomers, two freshmen, a redshirt freshman and a true freshman. My expectation level for them immediately is I don't expect them to see the field, unless you really, really have to. But, maybe for a couple games experience, but I don't even see either of them throwing 50 passes if they don't have to, right? Because so much is going to be riding on Cole Snyder, who's coming in from Buffalo. This is his final season. His first 3 years as a New York area high school athlete, ended up going to Rutgers for 3 years, then Buffalo for the last 2. And after this past year with the coaching change and all that, he dipped out Thought he was going to go to Syracuse for a moment, but nope, chose EMU. I was very surprised about that. Obviously, he has a lot of experience that, for as long as Salem's been around at Eastern Michigan, nobody has as much experience as Snyder, just being in football facilities and just being surrounded by like the resources that at least Rutgers, who was in the Big Ten, like not the biggest Big Ten school ever, but they're moneyed, right? They're funded. He was obviously being coached up there too. When he went to Buffalo, he finally got to start. Had 3 really good receivers to throw to. One of them, of course, being Keon Williams, former Eagle. Then those guys all transferred out. He stuck around. Some talented guys can come through again. Sure, the window's open to it. But I just don't think that the opportunities were there for him in a sense where I've definitely talked about it on the show before, but he wasn't asked to do a lot. He wasn't asked to, really shock the world out there. He wasn't asked to be the biggest quarterback. He was just asked to make a couple throws here and there. But Buffalo's offense just definitely took a step back, not just on the talent perspective, but for whatever my eyes were worth last year, just like on a play calling level. I just did not love the direction that Buffalo was trying to find its way into the end zone. So I'm just going to read off his stats really quickly. At Buffalo in 2022, 461 passes thrown, 58.8% completion, little over 3,000 yards, 18 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. And then last year, threw much fewer passes by 90, 372 total, 54.5%, 2,100 yards, and a touchdown to interception ratio of 13-9. Not a huge runner either, just averaged 1.3 yards per carry in each of the last couple of seasons. He's not a long-legged dude. He's not, larger than life, like by stature. He's going to have to get some tough yards. If he's going to run the ball, I don't see him getting like the read option calls on 2nd and 10 at all. I definitely see it on like the 3rd and 1s with him. But he can be a smart option out there. I don't think he can be a difference maker with his legs, with his arm, even though the play calling probably worked against him. I'm not sure his athletic ceiling, and I'm sorry to keep dogging on the guy. I promise you that's not what I'm trying to do. But I don't think his athletic ceiling was obviously through the roof over the past few years. I never considered him as a top 3 quarterback in this conference. Obviously, it was very hard when DeQuan Finn was in town. With his level of experience, I could see him, taking a step forward. Very obviously, if he feels very comfortable in Eastern system, if he's as good as advertised at least, I don't see him being any worse than what Austin Smith was, right? I definitely see him as a guy who, doesn't have to get caught up to speed like so many of these other quarterbacks that have come through the system were. EMU's proven that it does well when it comes, when it comes in proximity with these quarterbacks that come into the program and they've already gotten experience, Mike Glass, of course, he's probably the best quarterback of the Creighton era, maybe ever. I don't know, just on a talent level. But Mike Glass didn't come into the system with no knowledge. He was a guy that came in through the JUCO ranks. Okay, that's cool. But a guy like Tyler Wiegers, right, who years ago ended up leading this team to some Big Ten victories, right? He was a grad transfer from Iowa. Taylor Powell last year, he wasn't a guy that didn't have any experience coming in. Not a ton of experience, but he did play at Troy. He did play at Missouri. And so, a guy like Cole Snyder, who not just got a little bit of playing time here and there on his way to the max stop that he's at now, he actually has 2 seasons worth of starting experience under his belt. And that just doesn't come with, all these live physical reps of like throwing the ball out there and like playing against live defenses, but also like the leadership. I feel like that matters. Like a lot was riding on his shoulders the last couple of years. Now he's putting so much on his plate because he obviously wants to finish on a high note. He's obviously not happy with the way that his max season ended. And he's smart enough to know that, like, hey, he has the talent level to make it here, but he also has to make sure that, I can be a good cook anywhere, but what am I cooking with, man? Like, I need some good recipes around me too. And I gotta trust the chefs to my left and my right. I'm talking about the coaching staffs here to help me prepare the meals that I want to be able to say that I can do out here, right? Because I just for whatever reason, if I'm him, I feel like I haven't gotten to my fullest potential. And that's me saying that, like, I just think that he has more to offer. And I don't think that he's going to do it by like throwing for 4,000 yards suddenly. I don't think he's going to do it for running for 700 yards suddenly. I just think he's going to do it by playing the style that he's been doing it, but he's going to be doing it at such a much more efficient level. That's my hope for him, of course. And that's the way, if he's going to get it done, that's the way he's going to have to get it done. He's not going to have to, he's not going to kill you physically. He will have to kill you between the ears, because that's the way so many of these guys before have done it before. And that's the way I see him doing it in 2024, if at all. So does EMU have, the guys up front blocking? Does EMU have wide receiver figured out? Does EMU have the tight end room, the development that's been going on in the tight end room with so many different styles of players in there, right? Are they going to be able to perform? These running backs now without Samson Evans and Jalen Jackson, but still got some talent behind, all these guys we're going to talk about in tomorrow's, not tomorrow's episode. That's in Thursdays. Can he get it done in a hurry? Obviously, if I had to point back to 2022 and saw, so much was obviously changing at once. Second-year coaching staff that's trying to like really, really change its image for a lot of different reasons, right? New receivers, new all this, new all that. He was obviously able to do it before. If you told me that like Austin Smith last year had relatively close numbers to what Snyder had in 2022, I don't think he would have left. Jeremiah Salem, will we see him during MAC play at all? I wouldn't be surprised if we saw him in non-conference play. I wouldn't be surprised if, even like Drew Viotto, if like it's, Jacksonville State game, or Jacksonville State, because that's week 3, and then St. Francis is week 4, right? Like guys like that, like I could definitely see, and this is definitely true for most years, right? I can definitely see depth getting onto the field at some point early on in September, but once MAC play hits, how far of a lead are we? How much more does Salem give you in the playbook than Snyder? Because I've gone through so much about like why I trust Snyder, and it's going to be, his smarts. That's what I'm going to trust, or hope that it's there, right? Because that's what they have to go for, right? If Salem is more physically dominant than Snyder, my question is, in what aspects? And in what ways could Salem extend the playbook in ways that Snyder can't? Because there are ways that Snyder can get this offense moving in ways that Salem cannot. That's what I'm going to accept from the start, now that it's August, whatever day it is, early. But if Salem, I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm just really, really excited to see what Salem might have to offer. Yeah, I don't know. Just got to wait and see. Just kind of rubbing my hands a little bit. Realistic expectations. this is where I'm just going to end this with the question for the audience, and then you just let me know what you think. Yes or no? Will Cole Snyder be an all-MAC quarterback this year? Will he finish a first, second, or third string all-MAC quarterback? You know, there's some returning guys. There's a lot of new faces. I already said before that this conference is going to be one where we're going to see at least 8 new quarterback ones across this conference, with only like 4 expected returning starters back, right? Brett Gabbert, of course, being the head of the pack there. Will he do it? That's my question to you.